Well, good morning, everyone. I think we'll get started, and if people are entering late, no problem. We'll invite them to join us. We'll also be recording this so that anyone who misses this time can come back to it later. So, good morning. Hope you have your coffee. Got mic up, and yeah, we'll just jump into some updates. And more than anything, we just want to be able to be able to hear from you as well. For me, that's an important piece, is to really get a kind of sense of how distance learning is going for you as a family. Make sure you're getting what you need and so on. So that's really the big driver for us. So we have some friends here. You may remember Miss Lori Warner, who's visiting us. She's joined us this morning. So good morning, Lori. We have some other friends as well. Michelle Bauer, a longtime friend of mine, principal in Fontana, has joined us. So hello, Michelle. So great to see you. Yeah, this is definitely a time for us in these roles to kind of stay connected and share best practices, what's working in this kind of completely different realm. So I plan on joining both Lori and Michelle's similar gatherings. So why not? Nice hat, Lori. Looks great. Oh, and then you also will see some familiar faces. Dr. Moreno's on. You see Ms. Lohof's here and some staff as well, other staff. So if we get a little laggy, I'll ask people to turn their cameras off. If not, then let's plug away. So while we have a little bit of information for you, again, we're going to leave plenty of time for Q&A. Make sure your thoughts and questions, comments are heard. So let's jump in. I'm going to share my screen and just share a couple of the slides, and we'll go from there. Callie, Dr. Moreno, you'll monitor the chat box. Thank you. So yeah, please feel free to drop some comments and questions in there. Dr. Moreno will interrupt me and say, hey, address this one now if she feels it's timely. If not, we'll just kind of start gathering thoughts and comments in the chat box and use that at the end of the Q&A. So again, nice to see you all on here. Hope you are safe and taking care of business. Here we are. Let's see. All right. Do you see slides? Hopefully. Crossing my fingers.
Yes.
Yes, you do. Thank you. Who is that? Rebecca? I can always count on Rebecca.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So welcome again, and we'll jump in with first just a huge round of thank yous to last night the PAC met, and closure or no closure, the PAC wants to continue to enrich the lives of our students. So we had a really fruitful meeting last night. So thanks to everyone who came out to that, our PAC members. I want to thank our staff as well. Again, I've said it before, but overnight they took a classroom-based school, flipped it upside down, and really in stride just kept providing resources for your kiddos. So they continue to do so and watching everything to see what's working and what's not, so that they can make sure that we're doing our part in this time. And lastly, I wanted to offer a huge thank you to you as parents. We feel it. Those of us who are parents feel it as well. And this is quite a challenge, just to navigate all together with the uncertainty, and then the trying to keep your kids in some sort of routine with learning. So I just want to thank you for your efforts as well, partnering with us in this entirely different realm. I think we're starting to hit our stride, which is nice to see. Let's see. So here are some things that we'll share this morning. A few updates on the closure, and if you've been kind of following, there's not anything substantially different or new at this time, but there are a couple things specific to us we want to share. Also want to just share a couple of nuances and details around distance learning. We're getting closer and closer to kind of finalizing what grades and report cards will entail. We had a really productive leadership meeting yesterday on the topic, so soon you'll get the details on that. So I am letting some other friends in to our meeting. Great, welcome everyone who just joined us. And then some updates going into next school year too. Just want to talk a little bit about what is known and specific to us. And that will be the extent of the updates. And then we want to make sure we're getting ample time for Q&A. Again, Dr. Moreno, if you don't mind monitoring that chat box, if something is urgent, then stop me and we'll jump into that. So you're going to see this slide several times in this talk, and hopefully it's becoming pretty evident, but our focus and priority is clear. And we won't make a decision that does not take this into consideration. So our priority at this time continues to be to offer our kids these connections and familiarity, all the while, with empathy and sensitivity to our families. So what is, translate that, what does that look like? A couple of ways in what that should look like is we're trying not to overwhelm you with we're trying to not overwhelm you with too much content, too much information, too many emails, being blasted at you or anything like that. That is something we're largely trying to avoid. And it's hard to kind of gauge if we're really if we're meeting that priority, right? If we're actually being able to do just that. So this is why, one of the reasons why I want to have these coffee chats is so that I can really get a sense, are we meeting that priority or not? It's definitely, these circumstances change learning significantly at this time, change the role of the school significantly. So business as usual for us, is not applicable here. So I want to make sure that that's happening, and I want to hear from you if your child is overwhelmed or anxious and we're contributing to that, then we need to find a different course. So that's one of the reasons why we hold these. I know teachers, doing a really great job of kind of staying connected with you guys and knowing what's working and what's not. So that's the balance, right, of making sure your kids get that connection and familiarity with school stuff, but not to the point where it's really just a burden to the family. So we want to know more about how that's working. An important update regarding free meals. We'll still continue to have meals for every day that we're open, but they're just going to be available for pickup on Mondays and Wednesdays. This is, I believe that's true starting next week. We'll put the official message out, but this is a big change. Instead of being able to come by every day for meals, you can get the week's worth of meals, or the meals for Monday and Tuesday, for example, on Monday. And then you can get meals for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on Wednesday. This allows, us to kind of not have so many people on campus for 5 days a week, which does our part to kind of keep people home. And then hopefully, there's a little bit of convenience for families too, not to go to school every day to grab a meal. So we're not reducing the number of meals. There's still meals for the week, but we'll change the distribution to 2 days. So that's a pretty significant update for meals. An exciting update as well is we're piecing together how to kind of relaunch Mileage Club in this closure. So we're going to do it. We're just working out the last kind of details. We've heard from several kids and parents who students are really motivated. They're kind of getting close to that 100-mile milestone and want to earn that shirt, one of my children included. So we're just kind of working the last logistics on how to kind of relaunch this in a way that's safe, obviously appropriate for the times, but will allow students to kind of pick up where they left off. If they were at 82 miles, they'll pick up and work their way towards 83 and so on. So we'll share the details shortly in an episode of ASA TV. But yeah, they're excited to kind of relaunch this for the rest of the school year. So yeah, just those are our updates regarding the closure. As you can see, they're very different than in previous ones where we've talked about extending the closure and so on. These are really kind of maintaining the rest of the school year with these additional kind of nuanced changes. So I want to talk a little bit about just our distance learning program. I won't get too into the details, but I just wanted to address some things that we've grappled with as a staff, and even some of the comments that we've started to sort of hear from parents now that we're kind of in the thick of it, right? We could recall for us, closing on March 13th, and then on Monday, March 16th, already having devices and resources available, we really haven't lost much time. So the first thing I wanted to speak to is that continuity. I know there's that concern of like how are we going to catch kids up who have been out of school for so long and so on. And yeah, it's a very real concern. We know learning in this format is different than being in a classroom. For some, I know for some students, this is a very comfortable and optimal environment for them. For many students, it's not. We know that. And so we're well aware of that, and we're doing the best we can, to address all those factors of not overwhelming you, giving kids continuity, all of that, going to our decisions. And hopefully, we're more right than we are wrong in what you experience. But some perspective is helpful here. Our kids are experiencing very minimal disruption as far as days go, right? We know because we were in a fortunate position to have enough devices, to have hotspots that literally overnight, right? March 13th, we close. March 16th, stuff is available for kids. They've really had no break in if they took advantage of the voluntary distance learning. They've not had much of a break from having access to instruction and content. One of the key things that we think is also favorable for kids is we are introducing new content. I know in some places the decision's been made where no new content will be taught. Schools will kind of figure that out for the fall, which I understand that decision well. For us, we said, no, we're going to move forward with content. We're going to teach it, and we're going to make it available to students now. So I think this is advantageous because we're not holding kids back. We're continuing to instruct them. Obviously, the pacing, the amount of content, the format of that has changed to what would happen if they were in school, but they're not just stopping on new skills as of March 13th with this intention of by August, when we start up again, picking up back up. We are finishing the school year through distance learning. We acknowledge the pacing and the scope of what's taught and learned may not be the same as if they were in school, but they're also not just stopping where we left off. I shared this before, but this is also advantageous, especially for our kids, specifically for our kids third grade and up. With the suspension of CAS testing, that's actually quite a bit of time we get back. For those of you with children in those testing grades, you may recall that there's not much new content taught during CASP testing to kind of lighten the load and make sure that their focus, the cognitive demand is on the testing. So with that being suspended, we're actually getting a little bit of time back. So that's helpful to help kids continue to progress. And I know one of the favorite things for my own children, and I know from hearing from other parents that offering live instruction multiple times a day is another benefit that to our kids that is going to help them kind of inch along in this tricky time. So just wanted to share that these are the kind of things that we've grappled with to make sure are happening for your kids. And for those of us who have that question, I'm like, are our kids going to fall behind? What are we going to do to catch them up? Given that so many of us in the state are in the same boat with this closure, it becomes kind of a question that is relative, right? How are our kids progressing relative to others who may not have had the same resources to kind of hit things in stride and continue going? So I feel pretty confident in our model, and I know that no model is going to be perfect here, and our goal is not to replicate school at home. We don't think that's in the best interest for you. But if you look at the aspects of our program, we feel that we're doing a service to kids. We're not holding them back. Dr. Moreno, I don't know if you wanted to add anything in just this kind of overview.
I think you captured it pretty well. With the CAS being suspended, that also includes the LPAC test, which is the test for English language proficiency. And they just yesterday were talking, they being the CDE, about the option of having taking that LPAC at the beginning of next year for our continuing students to consider for reclassification. So that's something optional that we will be looking at as part of our program.
Great. Thank you. And just circling back to live lessons, we focus on the core content areas for live lessons. Once a week, you're getting every day there's an enrichment lesson taught, but for a student's perspective, they get access to music once a week, STEAM Lab once a week, and so on. That's also intended to kind of lessen the burden for you guys. Still have, exposure to those grade enrichment classes, but not at a level that's overwhelming. So that's where we're sort of experimenting with different models too. We have teachers, like Coach Tate, doing live stream lessons, which aren't as interactive as like a Zoom lesson or a Google Meet lesson, but rather those are still live, and kids can obviously attend them and benefit from them. And then we've also had live interactive lessons. We've also had, recorded videos available. So we are kind of experimenting to see what's best, what's not overwhelming for you, and what helps kids continue to just have connection to their school. So we welcome feedback on that to see which models are working best. So last time we had a coffee, also shared that, we're sort of finalizing what grading will look like, grading and report cards will look like. We made significant headway here, and by the end of the week, we'll round this out with our staff and then kind of have the official message to you guys. But just sharing a little bit about what, again, the factors that have gone into distance learning, grading and distance learning, right? We want to make sure, we remain kind of aligned to Chino Valley Unified. Again, this is really important for our 8th graders as they go on to high school. So we have received, kind of resources from CVUSD, what they're doing as they're kind of grappling with the same questions around what grading looks like in this time. I think one of the most important factors into what we do is ensuring that we're holding students harmless. Nobody should be punished at this time, grade-wise, because of circumstances outside of their control, outside of our control. So you won't see a policy that hurts kids with grades, because of challenges that are, again, outside of any of our control. And again, grading has to be sensitive to all students. So we're getting closer and closer to what this will look like. And we'll have that message to you guys, but know that those are some of the key factors involved in the decision. Is we will not have a policy that harms kids in this time. We also want to make sure it's sensitive to all kids, in that we're not deviating greatly from what Chino Unified is doing, which could be, detrimental as well. So I also wanted to share an observation. Grades have not been discussed because grading has not been a popular topic of discussion in classrooms, because we haven't finalized what the policy looks like, right? Still, without grades kind of being the driver of what kids do and don't do, we're seeing really high participation in distance learning. So I think there's an important takeaway for all of us. We know grades can be kind of a carrot and a stick, for kids, and as they get older, it's kind of a motivator, right? They want that good grade. They're, concerned about a lower grade. I totally get that. We're not saying we need to do away with that by any means, but I just want you to consider that in this month, where grades have not been front and center, and we've seen this strong participation, we know that a desire to learn, that desire, that curiosity, that interest in being connected and being able to do something couldn't do yesterday as a result of a lesson, that has kind of emerged as really more of a driver than a grade, right? And something as sort of external as a grade. So it's been an observation I wanted to share. I want us to not lose sight of that, at the core, learning for the sake of learning is far more important than learning for an A. So I just wanted to share that this observation of the high rate of participation, watching kids engage in lessons, completing work away from their teachers, right? Not really knowing that what it will mean for their grade has been pretty interesting, observation to make. So just want to share that is a kudos to all of us, to you, parents included, right? To make sure that learning for the sake of learning is really taking kind of center stage here. So those are some updates there. Again, expect a more concrete policy regarding grading soon. We'll finalize it this week and get it out to you next week. I'll shift to sort of the last topic here that we have, and then get into some Q&A. Just we want to lose sight of what's going on next year, so we don't have the luxury of suspending thoughts about next year because we're in distance learning or anything. So we're very much looking into what's to come for next year. A reminder that we'll grow from 660 students to 810 students. That's a pretty ambitious growth of 23% in enrollment. That's sizable, right? We did it last year from 480 to 660, and now we have another kind of year of aggressive growth. So what that means, right? We are looking to add staff. This has been ongoing. We're looking to add staff to our ranks to accommodate those kids. So in the positions of teachers, paraprofessionals, proctors, and principal. I shared this, I think, in the last coffee, but if you did not participate in that, I've been fortunate enough to be in the role of CEO and principal for the last few years. Both roles I personally really enjoy, but our plan to grow to, in 3 more years to 960 kids, and as a sole, charter school where we don't have a back office, we don't have a district office that offers, some levels of support. We are our own back office. When you get to close to that 1,000 student mark, our kids, our staff really deserve a principal dedicated to the school, right, to running the school. Dr. Moreno and I have kind of split that role in the last couple of years, and our staff and kids, deserve a dedicated principal. What that means for me, as CEO, our board has made it very clear. They don't want me kind of behind the scenes, hiding out some office off-site or tucked away in some corner, which I agree. I want to, my goal is to remain very present. I don't plan on changing offices at this time, so front of the school is where you'll see me, and I do plan on being involved in the day-to-day as far as being accessible to the community. I do expect to have the principal run the day-to-day and be the contact for day-to-day school-based sort of questions and comments, concerns, etc. So I'm excited about this. Our growth always included this reality, but if we're going to have a high-performing school of nearly 1,000 kids, then we need these leadership structures appropriately sort of staffed. So that's just wanted to kind of clarify. I've been asked, so what happens to you? You're hiring a principal, you're going away, you're going, people want to know. I don't know if people are crossing their fingers or whatever it may be that's the case, but this was always the plan, to have these roles kind of emerge as we get larger. So we're very much in the thick of looking at our staffing implications, our growth implications. Diana Urbina and the front office have done a remarkable job of registering kids for next year, pretty much uninterrupted with the closure. They're getting those 150 additional students registered, and we are moving along on that as well. Any Dr. Moreno updates from 2021?
No, I don't think so. We're looking forward to welcoming our new students and staff next year.
Absolutely, yeah. So you may have seen the last thing regarding 2020 to 2021 school year. Recently, the governor spoke a little bit about that and possible guidelines or for schools regarding kind of maintaining some sort of social distancing there. So we're looking at that. It's too early to really kind of tell what that will mean, but I know there's been discussion of schools possibly having staggered start times and reconfiguring classrooms and other things like assemblies so that we limit the number of kids. I mean, this is quite a challenge. If this comes to be true, this will be a challenge for schools. We're at this point, just want to share, we're aware of that discussion. We're not really doing much with it other than knowing that it's potentially on the horizon. So I'm just going to ask our families to, much like the last 2 months of our lives, be prepared for anything, because these are the discussions and what the implications of COVID-19 could look like if going into next year. Again, my hope is that, there's school very familiar from August 10th, but trust that we'll be ready for whatever it entails. So just wanted to let you know that, yeah, that's very much on our radar. So that is more than enough time to hear from one person. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to turn it over to some Q&A. And
I'll just add also to the 2021, we've kind of started discussions too and thinking about our curriculum planning and that for next year. how the supports that we'll need for students, given this unique educational experience at the end of this year, including like literacy instruction in third grade and how that might shift. So we're starting to think about that as well.
Great, thank you for that. So I did not keep up with the chat box, so I'm far behind.
I will, that's right, I'll paraphrase for you. There's some kudos to the team for the connections that our teachers are maintaining with students with live instruction. And then the flexibility of enrichments being recorded is helpful with students who are getting antsy and needing to move around in the afternoon. And then is August 10th the start date for 2021? And it is. So that was the only question, was the start date.
Start date, yeah. So yes, right now there's no discussion of it being different. August 10th, same adopted calendar that we're going into next year. It would be the start date for the 2021 school year. Yeah, thanks so much for the kind words. And yeah, Joanne, I see your sort of the one. Let me make sure I read it. Sorry, live sessions live sessions being harder in the afternoon. Yeah, that's not the first time. So the comment was by lunchtime, sometimes my kids need to get out and move. So live only less sessions are harder in the afternoon. Yeah, I've heard that a little bit, a couple of times as well. I know we have scheduling challenges to make them earlier. Not that we couldn't really relook at it, but there are a lot of factors that come into play with that as far as why we have them offered in the afternoons. But we'll take note of that, Joanna, and anyone else who's experiencing that in lessons in the afternoon. These are the enrichment ones. If we're hearing more and more that those are challenges, and we'll see if we can figure out a different format. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Callie, around.
I think it's just also having the option of the recorded lessons has been helpful for enrichments, and a lot of our enrichment is being pushed out that way. So Joanna's adding another comment that as long as they're recorded, it's fine. Just that the mornings are easier, I think, at home to structure sometimes, and then by the afternoon, kids are kind of in different places.
Yeah. Okay. This is always a time that transition from my blabbing for so long to questions has a little lull, and then the questions pick up. So I've learned my lesson. I know you'll start asking them shortly. Let's see. Oh, a question that did come up off of this was just sort of the logistics of picking kids' materials up from school, right? So keep in mind, we really have another month plus of school, and it's just not at the forefront of our thoughts right now. We'll organize some plan for you to come by and grab kids' materials and kind of close out the school year for you that way. If anyone has anything that's urgent that they need to get from the classroom, like we had a kiddo whose glasses weren't in class, things like that, of course, contact me and we'll make it happen. But if it can wait, I'm just going to ask us to just hold off, and we'll come up with a plan to sort of clean out the classrooms with personal materials. Cool. All right, awkward silence, awkward silence. There's no way we got, oh, there's a comment, there it is. Michael with the Mileage Club question. All right, good. In regards to Mileage Club, how do we determine what mile? You'll get, we have all the data on kids have ran so far. So Ms. Lazo will get that information out. She'll probably share it with teachers, who will then in turn share it with kids or with you. But we'll get it to you. We have that. So if one of the kiddos is at 70 miles, Michael, in your house, then they'll be notified they're at 70 miles. If the other one's at 40, then they'll be told they're at 40 or whatever it may be. So we have that data. We'll get it to you, and we'll go from there. We've kind of went back and forth on Mileage Club, and it is going to sort of be based on the honor system. So we're just going to ask that as you submit miles that they're accurate and so on, which I know this community it will be, but we are going to rely a little bit on the honor system there. A question regarding yearbooks. So can we buy them online or by mail? So we do not have the capacity to sell them online. Allegiance also does not take like Venmo or PayPal. So I know there might be some confusion because PAC does do that, but the school sells the yearbooks and the school does not take Venmo. So we do need kind of the check. Check has been probably the easiest. Just mail the check to the school, make it out to Allegiance for the amount the yearbook is. I think it's $40. So they can be, Diana just answered via check. Joanna's question regarding the due date for your book. I don't know, but perhaps Diana, do you know when we have the due date for ordering a yearbook? So as of right now, we don't have a due date for at this point, but obviously we're inching closer. So let's see if we can get that answer out. I'll see if we can get that out to everyone. Refunds for field trips. So there's a couple of the two that are on my radar are 5th grade. Catalina and Director of Business Service Sarah is working on that to make that happen. And then Costa Rica for 8th grade is still getting sort of worked out because we moved the trip from spring break to June. Now there's discussion of obviously that changing. So for 8th grade, we'll get you the details if this pertains to you around reimbursement and so on, if that's the option. So 8th grade hasn't been figured out. 5th grade is being reimbursed through our back office through Sarah, and so we'll get I don't know the timeline for that, but I know that it's on her radar and she's getting it done. Julie, as far as getting yearbooks, there's a question: how will the kids get the yearbooks? We haven't figured that out yet, but I mean, I'm imagining similarly to how we do meals and how some of the teachers, as you have more materials for kids to pick up, a similar schedule, that will kind of honor the social distancing guidelines for pickup once they arrive at school. I'm sure we'll figure that out. Good questions, crew. Yeah. Question from I saw for sure that track meet is canceled. Not sure if checks ever got deposited for that. I believe I think PAC handles that. No, maybe you and I can talk about that offline. So, the question was around track meet is officially canceled. First, it was kind of postponed, and now it's officially canceled. And as far as not sure if checks ever got deposited, I'll find you an answer, Joanna, and we can figure out what that means. I'm not sure if those checks were deposited.
Did you see the question about how will students get their yearbooks? Sorry.
Yeah, so we haven't given that much thought, but I mean, much like we're doing now, when teachers have to get math workbooks out, the next module workbook out, or the TKK parents who or teachers who've got like a new set of materials out, they designate a date and time for parents to come by, bring your own pen and sign them out, kind of process. So I'm sure it'll be something similar to that, and we'll do it in stages so we don't flood the school all at once, with people, which is probably not advised at this time. So once that's set, we'll have it. You can see those are questions that under normal circumstances we'll already have answered, but with the closure, they've just kind of been pushed to the side for now. They're not all answered just yet. So yeah. But we will have an answer when it's time to pick up yearbooks. That's for sure. Cool. So I guess I want to ask you guys, and I'm hearing it, thank you for the nice comments and so on. And I'm glad, that the experience has been what it is for you with our model. And do you think we're sort of largely hitting that stride with being sensitive to families not overwhelming you, or are we flooding you guys with emails and you're overwhelmed? And I know that's, I may have just opened up, Pandora's box there, but I just want to know for sure, are we we're aiming to not overwhelm you. And do you get a sense that we're hitting that stride, or do we need to back off the correspondences? You know, are we flooding you guys with information? Okay. All right. Danielle answered for everyone. Perfect. I mean, we'll take it. Okay. Well, good. I'm glad that's what you're sharing. And if you're hearing from other parents who maybe aren't attending these coffees, because yet this is possibly another thing that could be adding to that burden, you know, please encourage them to let me know, or if you can, you know, bring that concern forward as well. I know, you know, we're hearing from you, which I appreciate, but I can imagine, you know, there's a number of parents who aren't able to participate in this, and or it's a challenge to get their message across. So if you happen to hear those, you know, please make sure they make their way to me. I want to make sure that all families, you know, continue to have a voice and are able to, you know, to communicate those concerns with us. I'll tell you, in all this is the one area of stress for me. What our teachers are doing is remarkable. They're just, you know, they get the priority. They just want to be able to see their kids, connect with them, you know, have exchanges with them, and they're doing great. When I visit their virtual classrooms, their lessons are focused, they're engaging, they're really hitting it out of the park. I don't have any stress around the instructional part of distance learning. My concern is if we're just kind of burdening you guys, and that's what we definitely don't want to be doing in this time. So this is why I'll continue to ask, you know, make sure that we're hearing from people. So awesome, thanks. Oh, and thank you all to, you know, we had some forms go out in the last few weeks. One was the intent to return, and the other one was specific for 8th graders around high schools. We had a really strong return rate. I think we're down to a handful of people that will hound to get their answers. So I think, yeah, I want to thank you all for getting those completed for us. Thanks. Cool. And is this format still working, you know, every other week or so having a coffee? Does that work for this group?
Yes, please keep it coming.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we can have like a more casual one, just hang out, right? When there are no updates, just everyone have their coffee. Yeah. Good. So I heard some yeses there. Great. We will. Awesome. Awesome. Hopefully you got to participate in the or attend the assembly on Monday. That was a lot of fun to have PAL students do it. Or I was not aware that it was my face for like the first 5 minutes, so I apologize for that. But if you go back to the recording, you don't have to see my face for 5 minutes. So I'm learning how Zoom works and doesn't work. But we'll have other assemblies for our students as well, and PAL is really excited to do that. I think Michael is giving us a cheers. So 5 p.m. Oh, that's why. Julie said to hold not a coffee, but a 5 p.m. equivalent of a coffee. I can see that happening. I think we might have to do that, gang. So it probably makes sense, though, right? For some parents who can't attend at this time, maybe a similar evening one would work. Right. Julie, I know why you're saying yes. Too funny. Too funny. Any last thoughts, comments? Cool. Great. Well, so we'll hold a coffee in a few weeks' time, and next week be on the lookout for sort of grading and report cards information. Again, I don't want people to stress about what grading and report cards will look like for the 3rd trimester. Keep in mind that it's hard enough to kind of, you know, summarize the extent of a kid's learning in some you know, some piece of paper at the end of the trimester that has letters on it, right? It's hard to just kind of capture everything they've learned and haven't learned. And so it's even harder now when we're at a distance, right? So know that that's why we're going to really work hard to not make a grading model something that ends up kind of hindering kids. On that, know that, you know, fast forward to next year and you're looking back on a child report card, everybody will look at the everybody will look back at the third trimester report cards knowing that there was just a different kind of approach to those. Right? They won't be as precise in the learning as what we would normally get, under normal circumstances. So we all have to kind of acknowledge that. Report cards will do their best to sort of tell you what learning took place, but I can, there are so many nuances that make it just that much more challenging to realize, kind of precise grades. But, we do want to communicate learning to you. And so they will happen. They will just be sensitive to these times. So, did I read that correctly? Did Diana just name the evening potential cocktails with the community? That does flow. That's pretty good. All right. I know I bet Laura Vesti is already designing the look of the announcement, and we need to host one of those now. So I think that's happening. So cool. Great. Yeah. And yeah, thank you, Lori, for the kind words. And yes, thank you for that. And Michelle, thanks so much. It's my friend Michelle from Fontana was grateful for attending. Are you still here, Michelle? Hopefully you're here. Say hi to us. Yeah, you're still here. I see you there. Yeah, and I want to thank this community. You are there, Michelle. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Michelle's my awesome friend. And so we've been kind of just hitting stories. Yeah. But yeah, I want to just take this time again to thank you all for just coming together in this way. I'm not surprised by this community, right? We're pretty tight knit from the get-go. But I do want to thank you for your part, for kind of having grace and patience with us as we sort of figure out what would be the best model for our kids, and just keeping staying connected so we know what's working for you and what's not. So we always welcome the feedback, just so we know we're going in the right direction. We'll tell you when we agree. We'll tell you when we can do it. When we can't do it, you'll always, my goal is that you always know where you stand. But throughout the rest of the school year, that priority won't change. We, front and center to our decisions is that idea that we know that this is a tricky and often very difficult time for many families. So the last thing we want to find out is that we were just contributing to that difficulty and challenge. So we want to be an outlet for you guys, a resource for you guys and your kids, not a burden. So if we're off the mark anywhere, we want to know. Yeah, some of our awesome staff who were able to join today, I know they'll have live lessons here shortly. So with that, yeah, I think we're going to close out unless there are any other questions or staff or anything you want to add to the conversation that I may have missed.
I only commented, thank you for all the great comments, and for, we'll make sure that those get passed on to our staff and teachers, the ones who were not in this meeting, because it does let us know that we're on the right track and give us that kind of motivation to keep going for our kiddos.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. Any other staff? Anything we missed? Great to see you too, Lori. All right. Well, then we're going to wrap it up. We'll close out. Thank you again for attending. We'll have a coffee again in a few weeks, and then we'll look at calendars and get a afternoon cocktails with the community schedule shortly. Sounds quite fantastic. So don't hesitate if you're like me and you think of your best questions, later, then just email them and we'll do our best to get you an answer as soon as possible. The recording of this will be available shortly, and we'll make sure it gets out to anyone including you, of course, but anyone who will want it. So great. You guys stay safe. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Dr. Cognette, it looks like Margarita might have an announcement.
Don't forget to go for your lunches, people, please. Monday and Wednesday, 9 to 11.
Got it.
They're serving good food. Have a great day.
Thank you, Margarita, for that reminder. Yes. All right. Thank you all.